My name is Fallen Observer, and I'm going to continue the reading of this Ouija board experience as told by Redditor Sarah Smile 416. Sarah, I would like to thank you at this point for sharing your experience with us. And I hope that by me retelling the story, things aren't getting worse for you. But let's continue. Part 8. I was still pretty angry at it, but fear started creeping back into my consciousness. While most things I had experienced up until then were unexplainable, being attacked by bees and then all symptoms and signs of anaphylactic randomly disappearing had me questioning my sanity. Did I imagine it? Is it trying to wear me down and get in my head? Is it already there? A few weeks went by with the normal crap happening. The flashes, the blinds, the cold, etc. It got to the point to where it was just commonplace to see my naked grandmother on the side of the road being ripped apart by demonic dogs. It's funny. It's funny how the human mind can desensitize itself. Instead of being horrified, I just think to myself, oh, it's a brown demonic dog this time. Last time it was that pretty gray color. I knew I was depressed. I knew I was losing hope fast. I knew I had to figure out some way of kicking the snot out of it or soon, or else it would either completely lose my mind or be completely overtaken by it. If given the option, I'd rather lose my mind and spend the rest of my life in a nice padded cell making beautiful macaroni and Fruit Loop necklaces with floppy, rather than giving it control. But it was apparently too stubborn for that. It was around that time I started doing some research. From the safety of my car in Liz's apartment, I searched for Ouija board stories and such the like. I was flooded by information about how we did it wrong. There was no silver on the board. We only had 2 people. We didn't say goodbye. I initially had the intention to mess with Liz. We let it go in circles. We left the placenta on the board when not in use, etc., etc., etc. Well, we had managed to pretty much break most of the rules. Great. I then moved it on to the name that was spelled out on the board when I was alone. Yeah, no, definitely shouldn't have looked that one up either. Well, this research was going swimmingly. I then started looking up ways to deter a demon. I read about sage, crystals, and all kinds of other things. Because we went to college in the middle of nowhere, I couldn't run to the local mystic shop down the road and get sage and crystals. I ordered it online and depleted most of my bank account to overnight it to me. I tried to fix the chain to my cross necklace I had bought at the Christian bookstore, but it was tangled within an inch of its life. There was no fixing it. I couldn't even get the cross off to put onto another chain. I contemplating going back to the Christian bookstore, but the lady there was creepy. realized I had never called Friar Bob back. I realized the Ouija board had magically returned to my apartment. I remember thinking to myself, is this weird, devoid of emotion like voice? Well, I hope he's not dead. That'd be a drag. I was confused by my desensitized nature, but shrugged it off along with everything else. I looked up his number and gave him a call. No answer. Well, that sucks. I left him a message, something to the extent of, hey, Friar Bob, it's Sarah. You know, Sara and Liz, the idiots with the Ouija board. Sorry. Ignore my language. Yeah, I have a bit of a problem and I hope you're okay and not dead or anything and can help. The board is back in my apartment and it's spelling out some scary stuff by itself without me touching it. Things have been really escalating too. I'm kind of losing it and I think I need some more help. I don't know what else to do. I just ordered some sage and some protection crystals and crap like that. Sorry. But it's not coming until tomorrow, so yeah. Anyways, if you're not dead or whatever, could you call me back? Thanks. I'm not very good on voicemails. I hung up the phone and went back to my research. I decided to look up Will. I started by stalking him on Facebook. His page was still active with a lot of people posting how much they missed him. It was a real drag. I started looking at the pictures of him and Liz from when they were together. They looked so happy, weirdly mismatched because of their height. He was 6'7" and Liz was 5'3". But extremely cute in their mismatchedness. I tried to figure out how he fit into this whole mess. But the only thing I could come up with was either he was involved because we tried to contact him on the Ouija board, or because he's Liz's guardian angel or something like that. I still had no idea if I believed in guardian angels or not. But at this point, I was open to anything. With all the crap I've seen and experienced, I wouldn't have been fazed by a flying saucer dropping down in front of my car. 99% of people go through life without realizing the full gravity of the world or the universe in which we live. They float through life without realizing that we are constantly surrounded by a fight between good and evil, and that there is so much more to life than just us. Their blissful ignorance was definitely something I missed, and still miss. I stopped looking at Will's Facebook page because it was making me sad. I wish I could somehow communicate with Will the next time I saw him, whenever that was. I hadn't seen him since the incident in the abandoned house, and maybe gave Liz some closure. I know she thought she may have gotten some closure with the Ouija board, but I wasn't certain that was him talking. Who knows? I had no clue. Nothing was certain. Everything I had ever believed or believe was up in the air, constantly being juggled, and I wasn't a good juggler. In the morning, my sage and crystals arrived. I decided, like a big idiot, to go back to my apartment and try to communicate with Will, or even to give it a piece of my mind. I'm not going to blame this on it controlling my actions, but I like to think that's why I decided to do this. I like to think I am not that stupid, but who knows? Maybe I am. Even though my necklace was twisted beyond help, it was silver, so I put that on the coffee table. A little candle, and lit the sage. Probably looked like an idiot prancing around my freezing cold apartment, burning the sage, but I wanted to get every single nook and cranny. I opened drawers, closets, cabinets, the refrigerator. Everything got a little bit of sage smoke in it that day. Thankfully, I am not that much of an idiot because I thought to unhook the fire detectors. It was a bit smoky. After going through 4 bundles of sage, I put the crystals around the room and started pouring salt around, as indicated in some of the posts I read. I also grabbed the cross from the last place it put it. For those of you keeping track, I was in the toilet this time. It was in the toilet this time. And put that on the coffee table as well. I took a deep breath, said a prayer, yelled that no spirits, no evil spirits were invited, and put my fingers on the planchette. I knew I shouldn't be doing it alone, but I didn't see any way around it. I wasn't going to ask Liz, that's just mean. I wasn't going to involve someone else. Why ruin another life? I tried focusing on Will's image in my mind. Will, I asked, are you there? Nothing. I waited around for a few minutes and still nothing happened. I went back to the computer. I typed how to contact a spirit by yourself. There were a few hits, mostly about some sort of mirror deal and something called spirit writing, automatic writing. I didn't have a mirror I could easily access, so I started reading about the spirit writing rigmarole. Sounded simple enough. Sit there in a semi-meditative state to put the pen and paper and have at it. I went and grabbed a sketch pad and a sharpened number 2 pencil. I sat directly in front of my space heater and said another little prayer and said that nothing evil could come through. And I started sitting there. The flashes got really bad, so I started to pray again to hopefully quiet them. I tried to focus on Will as much as I could. The flashes were getting worse and worse. Even now, thinking back on it, I can't even put into words what I saw. There was no language known to man that could adequately describe them. Ripped, burning flesh, lots of stuff with eyeballs and knives, insides on the outside, people I love being torn to shreds, raped, tortured, burned alive. Their screams still haunt me. I sat there for as long as I could stand it. I'd say I sat there for about 20 minutes or so. I could feel sweat pouring down my face, and there lay freezing against my cheeks from the cold surrounding me. I was holding the pencil so hard I was afraid it would snap. Finally, discouraged at my lack of endurance, I opened my eyes. It was pitch black, both inside and outside. It was late morning when I started. Wow. reached over and tried stupidly to turn on the lamp. The light popped off, burned out. I searched the couch for my phone. Finally, I grabbed it and turned it on. 6:56 p.m. 22 missed calls. I think I screamed. I probably screamed. I probably cursed up a storm. Forget this nonsense. I started scrolling through my missed calls. 21 of them were from Friar Bob. The other one was from Liz. I threw the stupid board back in the closet, grabbed my sketchbook and ran out to my car. I just started driving anywhere. I had to get away from that stupid apartment. The flashes were pretty bad, but I just wanted to get somewhere so I could call Friar Bob back in peace. Liz was at rehearsal by that time, so I couldn't go to her house. So I kept driving. And I ended up at the abandoned house Liz and I found. I didn't realize I was there until I was there, if that makes sense. Not really my ideal place to be, honest. I looked up at the pitch black house, its bluish siding looking gray in the blackness of the night. I could have sworn I saw a soft glow of light in the upstairs window, the same window I saw Will standing in. Nah, I was just imagining things. I grabbed my phone and went to call Friar Bob back when suddenly I saw a flash of light, similar to a camera flash coming from the house. I looked up again. There was definitely some sort of soft glow coming from the upstairs window. It was a yellowish orange light, and the light source was coming from the far side of the room. Near the corner, I saw Will standing in, if my memory was correct. I took a minute to try to figure out what to do next. On one hand, I wanted to talk to Will again. That was the whole reason I did the stupid spirit writing that ate up my whole day. On the other hand, was I really that stupid to go into an abandoned house with definite paranormal activity alone with a demon stalking me? Yeah, I was stupid enough. Again, I really want to think that it made me do this, but I will never know. For those who have been tormented mentally and physically by some sort of demonic presence, you start questioning all of your motives. You have no sense of self. I started up the dirt hill to the house and walked in the front door. I was using my phone as a flashlight, but it really didn't do any good. I tried to remember where the holes in the floors were. That's all I need to fall through the floor of an abandoned house in the middle of nowhere, with no cell phone service, with a demon trying to eat me. I carefully navigated until I found the staircase upstairs. I could see a bit of ambient light coming from the top of the stairs and went in that general direction. As I neared the top of the stairs, I heard something whispering my name. I turned around to the blackness of the downstairs area behind me. Nothing that I could see was there, but I really couldn't see much, so who knows? I stepped back onto the last step. When I heard it again, I spun around with my cell phone trying to see. Again, nothing. I brought my second foot up to the top of the stairs when I heard my name being screamed. The shock almost sent me tumbling down the stairs. I grabbed onto the porch of a banister to steady myself, and it ripped from the wall. Everything seemed to happen in slow motion. of my body falling backwards, banister still in hand. I felt each foot leave the safety of the floor. I saw the silhouette of my feet against the pale light coming from the room fly into the air. I heard my name again. I saw the horizon line of the top stairs start to move up as I started to fall under further and further back. I felt the sharp pain of my shoulder hitting a corner step. I felt the stabbing pain of my head hitting another. I could see the archway of the top of the staircase get further and further away as my body slid down the stairs. I smelled the dust that my body was kicking up. I felt the walls sliding past my fingertips as I searched for something to grab on. I felt my head hit another step and stop the sliding momentum of my body. I felt my legs start to flip over my head. And then I felt the hands. I felt hands on my legs, stopping me from flipping over. It was a warm feeling which was quickly forgotten as I dangled upside down. I felt my feet being softly put down on the next step. I felt hands on my back as I tried to stand up without falling backwards down the rest of the stairs. As soon as I was sure my footing was secure, I whipped around as fast as my throbbing head could stand. There was nothing there. I went back around and looked at the top of the stairs. Will was standing there against the pale yellowish light. Will, I shouted. He just looked at me, smiling and wiping dust from his hands. I started to run up the stairs, but he put his hand out to stop me. He pointed downstairs in the general direction of the front door. You want me to leave? He nodded and pointed again. But I have so many questions. He shook his head, pointed to his wrist as if there was a watch, then pointed again in the direction of the door. I shook my head and started up again, but Will started waving his hands to stop me. I complied. I need you to help me stop this, I pleaded. He nodded his head, but again pointed to the door. I wasn't having any of it. Can't you just answer me once? He shook his head, pointing to his wrist again. I was starting to get angry, but the anger was muddled by the throbbing of my head from my fall. Were you the one who stopped me from falling? He nodded again and pointed again. When will I see you again? He seemed to ponder this for a moment, then just smiled. Aggravated, I started up the stairs again, but was stopped dead in my tracks by my name being whispered again. Will got an urgent look in his eyes and pointed towards the door. I finally took his advice, and one last look, ran out of the house and into my car. I looked at the clock on my dashboard. It was 10:50 p.m. I had been there over 3 hours. What in the world was up with this loss of time thing? I drove back into town and parked outside of the Walmart. 10 more missed calls, 8 of them being from Friar Bob and 2 being from Liz. Liz must be out of rehearsal. I decided I'd text her and that I'd be there in a few minutes. That would buy me some time to call Friar Bob. I hit the send button and finally looked down at my clothes as I listened to my phone ring. I was filthy. Friar Bob answered after 4 rings. Sarah? Friar Bob. I'm glad you're not dead. Look, I'm sorry about Sarah. Do you still have the Ouija board? He asked in an urgent voice. Yeah, it's in my closet again. Does Liz know? Yeah, she saw it the other day, I said, confused. Okay, just tell her I gave it back to you. What? Why? Because I don't want her to know it just randomly showed back up at your house, he said and seemed to be out of breath. Okay, I said. Why? We need her to maintain her faith in all of this. The less she knows, the more strong her faith will be. I've been doing some research and I've prayed a lot on it, and I think that the entity is really after Liz. It is using you to get to her because you were an easier target with your lack of faith. Kind of a stepping stone, he said. I tried to process it all. But why does it want her? I don't understand. Now why is the Ouija board back in my apartment? I don't know yet, but I will be over an hour to get there, if that's okay, he said, and I could hear him turn his car engine on. Yeah, sure, I can meet you there, I said, still confused. Why didn't you just get rid of it? I thought I did, he said in a very low, sad voice. Well, there's been other incidents in all of this, I continued. When I found the board was back, it was sitting on my coffee table, and the pointer thing started moving by itself. It spelled out what I thought were random letters, but then I Googled it, and it had spelled out the name. Don't say it, Friar Bob shouted into the phone. Whatever you do, don't say it. Okay, I said, even more confused. Well, it spelled that. I also think Liz's ex-boyfriend is involved. He killed himself about a year ago, and every time I see him, things stop for a moment. It's hard to explain, but I tried to communicate with him this afternoon, and just don't do anything until I get there, Friar Bob said sternly. I agreed and hung up the phone. I didn't think it was possible, but was even more confused than I had been before. I drove back to my apartment to meet Friar Bob. I figured I should go upstairs and clean up a bit from my contact session so I wouldn't upset the priest. I figured that would not be a good idea. I walked into the freezing cold apartment and threw the board back into the closet. I started sweeping the salt off the floor and the windows and opened the door to get the overwhelming smell of sage to dissipate a bit. After I was done, I went outside to wait for Friar Bob. I took a seat in my car and figured I would start sketching some ideas for my upcoming set design. I am in theater. While I waited, I opened a sketchbook that I had used during the spirit writing. That only served to make me lose an entire 6 hours of my life. All over the pages were pictures and words. I had no recollection of drawing. In my mind, my hand hadn't moved at all. Part 9. My stomach dropped to my feet. The sketch pad was covered with all kinds of weird symbols, scratches and sketches that I had no recollection of ever doing. There wasn't really any order to them. Stuff was all over the page, and what appeared to be, to me, an arbitrary scattering of crap. Imagine for a minute if you were me. You stupidly tried to spirit write for about 20 minutes. You didn't feel the pencil move 1 inch. Then you open your eyes, and not only is it a few hours later, but there's stuff all over the sketch pad that makes absolutely no sense to you. And the intensity of the sketches and the amount of pencil lead on the page doesn't really add up to what a pencil can do without being sharpened. Though who knows what happened in those hours. I certainly could have gone to my room and sharpened the pencil. I have absolutely no idea what happened in that time. For the most part, I couldn't make heads or tails of what I saw. All I knew is that it was freaky and that I probably didn't want to know what all the symbols meant. I didn't want to know what came out of my hand, if that makes sense. I didn't want to know what had taken over my body to write this. I definitely didn't want to know what kind of message was being sent either. I really tried hard not to be as freaked out as I wanted to be. I didn't want to give it the satisfaction of knowing successfully freaked me out. Though I was scared, I was still angry and ready to take a stand. As hard as it was, I tried to look at the sketchbook as a piece of art, albeit a messed up one. I forced myself to appreciate the lines and the composition. I know it sounds crazy, but it gave me a bit of leverage over my fear. I nearly pooped my pants when there was a tap on my window about a half an hour later. Friar Bob had arrived. I may or may not have used the Lord's name in vain with that one, but Friar Bob didn't acknowledge it, thankfully. I got out of the car and he seemed to shy away from me. I don't know if it was just me being paranoid or not, but he definitely took a step back from me. Maybe he was just trying to give me room to get out of my car? Who knows? He didn't really exchange pleasantries. He just asked if the boy was still in the apartment. I nodded and went off. I nodded, and off we went, skipping merrily to the wonderful world of hell, aka my apartment. As per usual, Friar Bob started dry heaving on his way up to the yellow brick road. My walkway. We both pretended it wasn't happening. As we neared the door, we found it wide open. I could have sworn I saw Will standing inside, but I looked to see if Friar Bob saw him too, then looked back, he was gone. Did you just see him? Will, did you just... He didn't see anything. Friar Bob seemed to growl. Yes I did. We got into the apartment, and the board was exactly where I left it. Friar Bob immediately went to work after dry heaving a second time. He didn't look so good. He had sweat pouring down his face, even though it was as cold as ice in my apartment. He looked almost gray, and his hands were shaking pretty badly. Out of his briefcase, he pulled out his book. It differed when he had used the last time. He had visited with Liz and I. He started going at it in Latin again, though this time he was nearly screaming at the top of his lungs. I remember thinking to myself that he had better be careful because the vein in his neck was so big. I was afraid it would burst. I could see it pulsating with his quickened heartbeat. Next, out came the holy water again. He told me to sit down on the couch while he basically drenched me in the board with 2 bottles of holy water. Every time he splashed the water, I could hear something that sounded like thousands of people and cats. Yes, cats screaming in agony. I don't think I personally screamed, but it was so loud that I can't be sure. For those of you who will be asking, no, the water didn't burn me or anything like that, but the volume at which I heard the screaming in my head definitely made my head burn from the inside. I kept telling Friar Bob to stop for a minute, but he kept going, emphasizing each phrase was a forceful flick of the holy water in my and the board's direction. After the second bottle was empty, he took out a third and started going throughout the apartment again. I went to follow him, but he yelled at me to stay where I was if I was able. The "if I was able" phrase kind of slapped me in the fat and then it stopped me in my tracks. What did he mean, if I was able? Did he think I was being possessed? Did he think I was going to hurt him? Was I possessed? Did I not have control over myself? I mean, yes, I had blacked out and wake up a few hours later, but did that mean I was possessed during that time? Just when I thought I was taking back control over my life and my fears, he went and shattered that sense of control with 4 simple words. I broke down. All I had done, all that fighting was for nothing. Why fight anymore if all that happens is that I piss it off and it controls my body without my knowledge? What in the world was there to fight for if it had already taken possession of me? My heart and mind were shattered. There was no hope. Everything I did was in vain. Everything I have fought against, endured, suffered through, and put up with meant absolutely nothing. The bruises, the bees, the flashes of it all. Why, if I was actually possessed, didn't I just succumb to the thing at the beginning? It would have been so much easier. I wouldn't have had to deal with all of what I've gone through. I just sat there on the couch and sobbed, adding my cries to the sounds of the screaming in my head. I just kept thinking in my mind over and over, please God, just let me go. I can't help you anymore. I can't fight anymore. You won't miss me. Please God, just let me go. Don't make me fight anymore. But then, a fleeting thought popped into my head. What if Friar Bob had just said that to break me down? What if he a part of it? What if he was sent by it to give me hope and completely shatter it with one phrase? That was a punk move for sure. But I didn't really expect less of it at that point. What better way to exert power and manipulation than to hijack a Catholic priest? Forget that. I got angry. Again. First my stuffed dog, and now a Catholic priest. It took all I had to give in and let Liz call Friar Bob, because at the time I saw it as admitting failure, and now it was using him against me. Forget that. I got up from the couch and ran back to my room where Friar Bob was blessing my bed. Just so you know, I could have stayed on the couch if I wanted to, but I need to know what you meant by that. I yelled, and yes, I said F to a priest. Friar Bob nearly jumped a foot in the air and spun around in a defensive position with what I perceived to be fear in his eyes. I doubted myself again. Did I get up off the couch and come in here because I wanted to, or because it wanted me to? I could feel myself cracking. What was real and what was it just messing with me? I had no perception of self, and as I have said to a few of you, this was the scariest part of the whole fiasco. Everyone has a sense of self. No one doubts the source of their own actions. Sure, you doubt whatever. You doubt whether or not you should do or say something. But you always know that you yourself did what you did, and you alone. No one has a puppeteer controlling their movements. What you decide to do, you do, and there is no questioning it. Well, that wasn't the case for me. I had no idea if I was in control of it, was in control, and that was terrifying. Go back to the living room, Sarah, Friar Bob said, with his hands outstretched, holding the holy water and a cross. He was holding them as stupid as it sounds. Someone would hold them out to ward off a vampire. The fear in his eyes scared me, and I retreated back to the living room. I didn't really have any tears left. I was numb. Me. Nice, shy, funny old me, terrified a Catholic priest. I could hear him move out onto the bathroom. I could tell because not only was his voice a bit closer, but it echoed differently. In the distance, I could hear the sound of bees, and I remember thinking that I hoped the bees would come and kill me. It was then for the first time I seriously thought of ending it all for good. I had suicide thoughts throughout the ordeal, but still I had hope. Now I had none. I glanced over into the kitchen and saw a block of knives. If I did have control over myself anymore, forget it all. The last decision, the last action of my life would be on my terms, not its. Again, time seemed to slow down for me, and I had a very distinct stream of consciousness, thoughts, and conversations with myself, with every move I made that I still can't remember very clearly to this day. I don't know if that was me imagining it controlling time, or God trying to buy me time. Who knows? I certainly didn't. I got up off the couch. I remember the feeling of the pillow on my fingertips. It was so soft. Was this the last time I'd feel it? Would I be able to feel them after? And speaking of after, would I go to hell because I allowed myself to be possessed? Or would I go to heaven as a reward for fighting as hard as I had? I remember my knees locking up when I stood. I had always had knee problems ever since I was a little girl. I remember thinking that at least I wouldn't have to deal with that pain and annoyance for much longer, because I did go to hell, and in hell you had the same medical problems as you did when you were alive. Maybe they would even be magnified, because after all, it was hell. I took a step towards the kitchen and and stumbled a bit on the transition from carpet to tile. Oh, how I had stumbled in life. Look how far I had fallen. I stepped into the kitchen and turned toward the knives, which we kept near the refrigerator. I looked at the pictures on the refrigerator. I wondered what my sister would do without me to keep her out of trouble and on the right path. But then I realized she was pretty smart on her own, and I'm pretty sure Liz would take care of her if I wasn't around. Liz was an amazing friend like that. Then I started to think about how Friar Bob had said it was using me to get Liz. Well, maybe with me gone, she'd be out of danger. She didn't deserve all of this. It was my fault. Everything started because I thought I thought it would be funny to mess with her with a Ouija board. Maybe even let her talk to JFK. JFK. Maybe if I go to heaven, I finally found out who shot him. I neared the knives, and I wondered how much it would hurt. Of course, I knew the right way to do it on my wrist. But would that be quick enough? Would Friar Bob intervene? Should I just go for the gold and slit my own throat? Surely that would go faster. Maybe my femoral artery, too, would just be on the safe side. I reached the block of knives and debated as to which one I should use. The serrated one, the big butcher knife. Man, I'd probably have to sharpen the paring knife. Just as I reached my hand around the butcher's knife, go big or go home, I felt a hand on my shoulder. I turned around. It was Will. He looked sad and kind of shocked. He shook his head at me. I turned back around, ignoring him. Maybe if I was dead, I'd be able to talk to Will, and if so, maybe I could come back and give Liz some messages from beyond the grave. I mean, I knew it was possible, obviously. Will grabbed my arm tighter as I tried to pull the knife. It was stuck on something. I turned around again to face Will and give him an angry look, as if to say, no, this is my choice. Somewhere in the depths of my completely burned out mind, I heard a deep voice saying, no, it's not. Believe me, it's not a good idea. Your mom and family will be devastated. I thought about this for a moment. Yes, my family would be devastated, but really, they would rather to. But really, would they want to remember me as who I am? Or I was to know me as some possessed shadow of my former self? I continued to yank at the knife, trying to get it free. Will's hand tightened again. I heard the voice in my head. If you do this, it will shatter Liz's faith, and they will go for her. You're the only thing that's standing between her and them. Do you want to do that to her? Stay. Fight. This stopped me. It was true that I was the only thing standing in the way of Liz and it. Then did I really want to assume even more responsibility for ruining her life? Even more. Perhaps even taking it in a very roundabout way. Did I want to go to heaven or hell? And such a wonderful person in Friend's life? Did I want to go to heaven or hell with the knowledge that I knowingly was the catalyst in the ruining of such a wonderful person in Friend's life? Did I wish upon her what I had been going through? Was it bad enough to completely disregard everything Liz had done for me and to pass the reins off, so to say, to her? No, definitely not. I took a deep breath and tried to let go of the knife. I couldn't open my hands. I heard a noise behind me and whipped around. This time the knife slid out the block with ease. It was firmly implanted in my right hand. It was Friar Bob, and I think I may have given him a heart attack. He put his hands up with the cross and holy water and started talking very loudly. Latin prayer intermixed with English phrases like, "Sara, you don't want to do this." I wanted to tell him that I didn't mean him any harm, just that I couldn't let go of the knives. But no words were coming out of my mouth. I looked towards Will, pleading for help. He kind of closed his eyes and seemed to concentrate very hard. Very slowly, the air around him seemed to shimmer, similarly to when I saw him shimmer in the house. There behind him appeared two figures. The first one was a dear friend of mine from high school, who unfortunately died in a car accident. The second was my grandfather, who had died when I was 11. Very slowly, I felt the grip on the knife start to ease up, until finally I dropped it to the floor. I kicked it away from me, a la every cop show I've ever seen, and put my hands in the air. I tried to explain myself to Friar Bob, but didn't want to hear anything. He kept telling me to be quiet. In retrospect, I can only imagine how he perceived the evening. First he gets called at something he had thought he had destroyed was back in its original place. Then he gets a call that this semi-possessed girl is rambling about dead exes and demons naming themselves. Then he gets there and sees this girl, who for sure looks like she just went through a hurricane, or at the very least it looks like she's possessed, studying demonic symbols in her car. Once he gets inside after puking, he sees the Ouija board, the same one that he thought he had gotten rid of, sitting on the coffee table, ready to go. Then he blesses her with holy water and appears to burn her, though it didn't, at least not how it is assumed to hurt. Then he tells her to stay, but is afraid she is going to come after him. She does. He freaks. She goes to get a knife. She comes at him. Poor guy. I did feel bad for him. I felt bad we had involved him in this mess. I understood he didn't really want an explanation of why I was wielding a large butcher knife. But at that point, didn't really care because I had seen what I did. My grandfather, who I love and miss dearly, and my good friend were at my side and ready to help. At least that's how I perceived it. And that's all that it really matters. You take hope whenever you can. Get it when you are halfway possessed by a demon. Friar Bob made me sit back down in the living room and started blessing me again. The screams started up again, but weren't as loud. I tried to stay perfectly calm while he prayed, so he knew I was back in control. But the opposite effect happened. He He thought that it had completely taken over and was stronger than he had anticipated. I knew what was going through his head because I could see the fear, and there was a change in his voice. He flipped some more pages and started reading a different text, this time with English mixed in. I heard a few "Begone, Satans" and "The power of Christ compels you" thrown in there, and I immediately thought of how I said that to Liz and how terrifying it must have been. I don't know if it was the exorcism prayers or just the knowledge that someone obviously sent from God, because my grandpa and my friend were two of the most amazing people I had the pleasure of knowing, and therefore had to be sent from heaven and not hell, was on my side. For Fire Bob's benefit, I went back to pretending like the water helped. Let my agony come to a grand crescendo, and then acted like everything was better. It's not that I didn't believe in the exorcism or whatever he was doing. I somehow innately knew that I had the power to do this on my own without the religious ritual. Sure, the extra prayers always helped, but whatever resolution Friar Bob was waiting during the ritual for wasn't going to come. It had come when he was still in the bathroom when I saw my grandpa and my friend. I don't think Friar Bob was stupid or dumb or anything like that. I just knew that he didn't have a full grasp of what was going on. Maybe because he wouldn't listen to me. LOL. After my saving, Friar Bob finally allowed me to talk about what was going on. I gave him the abridged version, all the while trying to figure it all out in my head. We started discussing why it may be going after Liz. I really think that it is trying to go after Liz because of her faith, said Friar Bob. She and her family are all very religious and do a lot through their church to enrich people's lives. Their ministry is successful, and I'll bet that doesn't sit kindly with those two who oppose God. I can see the logic behind that. Liz's mother and father worked for their church in a small town in which she lived. Because the major industry in the area had literally dried up, many people were without jobs. Liz and her family within her church put, and still do, on community dinners once a month to try and help out in any way they can. They organize lots of clothing and food drives. They open up a tutoring service for industry workers who want to go back for their GED or go back to college. They opened up an after-school program for kids whose parents had to work odd hours just to survive. They were really there, touching many lives, and as a result, most of the people they were helping were starting to come to church more often and had a more positive outlook on life. I wasn't sure if that was the only reason, but Friar Bob was adamant. Okay, whatever you say. By this time, it was well past 2 in the morning. And Friar Bob said it was time for him to go home. He wrapped up the board again with his stole and told me that as long as I continued to pray and to have faith, the worst was over. He planned on getting rid of the board as soon as he got back to his place. I watched him go, and out of the corner of my eye, I saw another flash of light similar to the abandoned house. I turned in that general direction and was hit with one of my flashes. Friar Bob was wrong. The worst was not over. But at least I had more strength to keep fighting. In my head, I started to figure it out. There was something that connected Liz, Will, and I. If I could figure out what that was, then I knew I could figure out how to stop this. Plus, if Liz was as strong as Friar Bob, and honestly, it led me to believe, I think she would be a great asset to have around to keep me grounded. I think Will had the answers, but it was a matter of figuring out how to get it out of him. I texted Liz and told her I would be over soon. As I drove to her place, I glanced in my rearview mirror and saw Will sitting there, smiling at me. Ready or not,